it all game. We are motivated. We are dedicated. Come on now. Come on now. We will win. We are the best on the field. And we in the field like, all day like, all night like, on the blue light, offense like, defense like, this squad like, house call like, and it sound like, and it sound like, and it sound like.
Welcome to the Short Sports Show. I'm your host, Daniel Short. Today is January 27th, 2017. And man, do we got a show for you guys. It's intriguing. It's intriguing. We're obviously going to continue our series of the way too early looks. The past couple weeks we did the Final Four, the college football top 10. Now we are going to be doing the Heisman favorites, top 5 early 2017 Heisman Trophy candidates. I mean, I know it's still January, but we're going to have some fun. We're going to have some fun. Obviously, some NFL news. The Pro Bowl is this week. Kirk Cousins is looking to get paid, and apparently less reported concussions in 2016. Also, a Browns legend doesn't want a quarterback with that top overall pick. We'll talk about that as well. I hope everybody's had a great week so far. I have been a pretty good week. I am now got a new job, guys. Awesome job. I am now a recruiting video editor for the next college student athlete, NCSA, and it is an awesome program. If you are a student athlete in high school, or you know somebody that is a student athlete in high school is looking to get scouted, get recruited, going to play at the next level, check out NCSA. I'm there to make some highlight tapes, and they're pretty solid. They're pretty solid. No, they're actually really good. So if you need that, they have other services. Of course, they will help you get a scholarship, financial aid, all across the board. They are there to help you every step of the way. They're not paying me for any advertising, and that's the last time I'm gonna give them a shout out. I mean, they got me a job, that's cool and all, but this is also my profession, my career. Gotta make some money on the side. So that's the last shout out. So it is on my Twitter though, at Short Sports Show, and on my Facebook, the Short Sports Show. So you guys go check that out. It's an awesome way to get recruited. Of course, we're gonna go ahead and step into college football news like always. And again, I know it's far too soon to be looking at or even thinking about the 2017 Heisman Trophy candidates, but we're gonna do it anyways. Everybody loves the way too early series, so I appreciate the support on that. But of course, Lamar Jackson, Louisville quarterback Lamar Jackson, he won it last year, and this might be a little controversial, but had the Heisman been a mid-season award, I think we would all agree, and I even made a video. I called it mid-season. I said, give Lamar Jackson the Heisman Trophy. There was no one else that deserved it mid-season. Again, probably a little too soon. This isn't obviously the entire year award. And towards the end of the year, we saw Lamar Jackson fall apart and kind of just not look so good. On the other side, we saw Clemson quarterback Deshaun Watson and Baker Mayfield and a few others really stand out and make a strong case. Overall, they continued. They said, you know what? We're still going to give it to Lamar Jackson. He deserves it. I was kind of on the fence at the end, and I really believe that the Heisman Trophy, just like the NFL does with the MVP, the Heisman Trophy should be at the end of the season, after the playoffs, and then announce it. Let's look at everything. And I think had it been like that, I don't know if we would have gave the Heisman Trophy to Lamar Jackson. I think it might have gone to Deshaun Watson defeating Alabama and the streak that they had and what Deshaun Watson did all season. It might look better in the end. And even though the game against Louisville wasn't so pretty, and Lamar Jackson, the way he played, I think it's a all season. What you did from game one to your last game, your bowl game, your playoff, your national championship game, you put it all in perspective and give out the Heisman Trophy at the end. Doesn't look like it's going to change, but that's just my 2 cents. Now, only doing 5. I thought about doing 10, but then it got, after about 5, you really start throwing in some wild cards, some guys that might make some noise. Some guys maybe not. And you try to be diverse because, of course, it gets kind of boring when you're just talking about quarterbacks. The quarterbacks, being a quarterback award, you want to find some other players. And yes, I think I have 3 quarterbacks in this list. The top 2 for sure are quarterbacks. And that's my fault. I know. But here we go. Number 1. Well, it's got to go to Sam Darnold, right? USC quarterback. Now, once Darnold took over for USC, he turned a 1-3 start, an ugly 1-3 start, to a Rose Bowl win and a team that almost made a late run into the college football playoffs. Now, he finished tied for 9th in adjusted completion percentage at 75.6%, and his 101.2 passer rating under pressure ranked 7th. Now, whether it was Darnold's big performance in the win against Washington or his comeback in the Rose Bowl over Penn State, he showed his ability to carry an offense and lead a team. And once he took reign, it was a different USC team that a lot of us thought would have gave Alabama a much bigger competition, of course, than what they had in week 1. It was like 55-6 or something, some outrageous score. Sam Darnold is the guy, and I think he's a favorite. And if he's not the favorite, this next guy definitely is. And it's not Lamar Jackson. I'll tell you right now, Lamar Jackson's on my top 5. I don't believe he's going to repeat. He's not going to repeat a Heisman Trophy. I think they were kind of already weary of giving him this past season. Even if he puts up the same numbers, which were ridiculous video game numbers, I don't believe he will get it again. The next guy had a good argument, especially if we're going to look at quarterbacks. And that's Oklahoma Sooners quarterback Baker Mayfield. The highest rated quarterback in 2016 at 96.1 overall per Pro Football Focus, who do these amazing stats. Mayfield in Oklahoma overcame a slow start and still finished with a Big 12 championship. And Mayfield he had a teammate, D.D. Westbrook, as a Heisman finalist. Now, Mayfield has got a very strong shot at going back to New York and being there for the ceremony, except this time he won't just be a spectator. He'll most likely be raising up the Heisman Trophy. Now, he was the top passing quarterback in the nation by a wide margin, sitting near at the top of all major passing categories, and his work under pressure and on the deep ball. His overall adjusted completion percentage of 80.1 led all Power 5 quarterbacks. He was accurate, dual threat, and he made plays when they needed. Obviously, the real mark on his resume last season was that terrible home loss to Ohio State. Had it been on the road, maybe it's a little bit different. At home, hosting Ohio State, and you couldn't do anything. That's a problem. Now, one thing we've been seeing with Oklahoma is, he's not going to have Westbrook. He's losing targets. Joe Mixon's gone. Samaje Perine's gone. How is he going to be able to play, especially at D.D. Westbrook, who was just an absolute star? Well, you look at Oklahoma's past receivers, and I mean, you go from Kenny Stills, Sterling Shepard, Westbrook, you had, and I'm missing 2 other names that I just had previously. These guys were replacing receiver after receiver after receiver, and they just kept winning. Quarterbacks kept doing their thing. So I expect him to still put up another 3,700-yard passing season, another 30-plus touchdowns. This guy is doing incredible stuff. And that's why that's my last quarterback I got on here. It's my last quarterback. But those 2 guys have to be the favorite at the quarterback position. Then we go to running back. And this one was tough. If you want to put 3A, 3B, that's fine. At number 3, I got Saquon Barkley, running back at a Penn State guy who helped carry that offense. He did his freshman year, definitely. And this past season, Penn State's finally got a quarterback. But he really led this offense. And not a lot of people talk about Saquon Barkley and how incredible athletic talent this guy has. Again, Penn State's going to be in contention to win the Big Ten this year, of course. And just a lot of hype. James Franklin proved me wrong. Had to bite my words. And he's got a team going. Saquon Barkley, electric guy. I don't really like to throw out stats too much, but this guy has it down. And he's one of my favorite running backs coming into the season. But another running back, this is where it got tough. Because you look at Darius Geis, running back out of LSU, it was tough because, of course, we all thought maybe Leonard Fournette wins the Heisman this upcoming year. We all knew it was going to be his last year in college. Well, at LSU, apparently, you can have a Heisman candidate, and then you could have replace that guy with another Heisman candidate. And Darius Geis was one of them. And the running backs don't really get a lot of love. But Darius Geis and Saquon Barkley have to be the top running backs coming back in 2017. Finished with 1,300 yards, almost 1,400 yards rushing, 15 touchdowns. Again, this was backing up Leonard Fournette, who did battle through injuries, did miss a few games. So guys still had a good amount of playing time, but he was still labeled as the backup running back. Leonard Fournette was the starter, was the guy leading this offense until he got hurt, until he started missing those games. And Darius Geis was a big play running back. And this is why maybe he's just a little bit better than Barkley. But again, I feel like Barkley had a worse O-line and thinking about the offense at Penn State runs more balanced than what Geis does. Geis is always going to have a little bit more stats-wise, running backs-wise. But 58.6% of his yards came from breakaway runs, 15-plus or more. That was third highest in the country. He's got talent. He's got it there. It wasn't just the O-line. And now, of course, LSU opening up the playbook is going to allow Darius Geis to do more things, catching out of backfield and just handling all the running back responsibilities. It's going to be exciting, so Geis has to be there. Now, I had to throw a wild card in here. And I know what people are saying. What about Bo Scarborough? What about Jalen Hurts of Alabama? And what? We got JT Barrett. Nice, and I just don't see it happening. So, at number 5, and you probably guessed it by looking at your screen up here, and those for listening at the show, you got to come check us on YouTube. Come subscribe. But James Washington, wide receiver of Oklahoma State, this guy is electric. I've watched him his whole career in the Big 12, and now I was able to see him live at the Alamo Bowl and what he does. And when you watch him, his full game speed live in person, it's a different story. The best slot receiver in college football, without a doubt. Washington is that guy. And he's actually going to get a little bit of help from his former Bedlam rival wide receiver in D.D. Westbrook. Westbrook got a lot of love as a slot receiver. James Washington steps right in there in the national picture and is allowed to be looked at as a Heisman candidate and potentially a Heisman finalist. Now, after back-to-back 1,000-plus yard seasons, including a 1,300-yard season, 10 touchdowns, he was 20 yards short of 1,400 yards. Washington's going to have the luxury of having his top quarterback, Mason Rudolph, another potential Heisman candidate. He's going to have him back along with a few other starters on Oklahoma State squad that should contend not only for a Big 12 championship, but also a dark horse in the college football playoffs. With that being said, that is why James Washington is thrown into this mix and should be looked at. Again, I know there's going to be more fans for Alabama, for Ohio State. They're going to say, what about this guy? What about this? These are my 5. And again, before anybody gets too hurt about this and wants to go in the comment section typing up, remember, it's January. It's just January. We got 8 more months to be talking about way too early picks. But these are my top 5. Let me know your top 5 in the comment section down below. Also, tweet me at Short Sports Show and become a fan on Facebook. And subscribe here on YouTube for more videos and to listen to the full show. Come on over to Spreaker, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, iTunes, iHeartRadio. We just about everywhere. So that is my top 5. And actually, guys, that's it for college football. There really isn't too much news. Of course, Brent Musburger, he is retiring, and it's bittersweet. As a broadcaster, I'm not one of those people who just listen to a game well, actually, I should say just watch a game and not really pay attention to the analyst. As a broadcaster, I got notes. I always jot down something, jot down notes when I'm watching any game. It could be from the All-American games in high school to college football games, of course, to the NFL. I always jot down notes because I'm constantly learning the play-by-play and the broadcasting element. And I've also had opportunities to be in the broadcasting booth at Texas State, and and also for my local high school, San Marcos High School. And I'm always learning. And the pioneers in this industry have been Vern Lundquist, Brent Musburger, Vince Scully. Those guys you constantly hear. And it's for a reason. They're the best in the business. And sadly, I think a lot of people really don't understand or don't pay attention to the broadcasters and their talent that they have and the way they can present a game, present a content with so much enthusiasm and a different type of style that makes listening to a game differently. I can listen to Vern Lundquist, to Brent Musburger, to Al Michaels, to Vince Scully, Mike Tirico. I mean, the list goes on, and especially some of the radio guys, Josh Lewin. I always forget the guy at the Tennessee Titans. He was the one that mainly got me interested. His name's Mike something. Those guys, they can call any game. They can call anything. It could be, and no disrespect if I say your skull, but they could call southeastern Missouri Western Intercontinental University versus blank state, right? And that game would be so entertaining. It would be, because how they present it. And so now Vern Lundquist is now retired. Now Brent Musburger, he's retiring. He's got one more game. And even though I'm not a huge fan of college basketball until it gets, to the tournament, I will be watching Brent Musburger's last game. I believe it's Kentucky and Florida or Kentucky and Tennessee. I'll be listening to it just because it has been a pleasure and an absolute honor to listen to these greats call games. And hopefully listening to this, maybe it'll change your perspective, not just for broadcasters over, but just for broadcasters overall, to listen to how they present a game and what makes it so unique. Some are bad. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Some are just bad, but most of them are really good. And we get these rare exceptions for the handful of just great icons. And so, if you have some old games where Brent Musburger's calling it, go back, rewatch it. Most importantly, listen to it. Listen to the game. Because those guys have made it possible for someone like me to do what I'm doing and eventually get to where I'm wanting to go. So Brent Musburger, if you ever listen to this, thank you. Thank you. Today's show is sponsored by InnerGrind. Based out of Houston, Texas, let former Texas State linebacker Michael Rakpo help you reach your fitness and nutrition goals. With personal training classes that start at $40 a session, why not be a part of this rising program? And whether your goals are to lose weight, gain muscle mass, find the right off-season program, or even for you ladies out there to get that booty blast, you can do it all with InnerGrind. Not a Houston area, not a problem. InnerGrind has a program that is personalized just for you. InnerGrind has everything you need to meet your personal and healthy goals. NFL linebackers like Titans Brian Orakpo, Chiefs Derek Johnson, Buccaneers running back Charles Sims, and San Diego Chargers cornerback Craig Mager, along with many other young athletes, have already begun. Find your personalized workout and nutrition plan at InnerGrind.com and call 832-475-2829. That's InnerGrind.com, 832-475-2829. Unleash your inner grind. Houston Texans defensive end Jadeveon Clowney withdrew from the Pro Bowl because he needed a minor arthroscopic surgery on his left knee. Now, the surgery is just to clean up the knee, and he was not going to miss any time in the offseason. It's not going to change anything too drastic for him. Now, Clowney, he's been on the injury report for the majority of the season with the wrist, elbow injury. He also missed 2 games in 2016. But he was named to his first Pro Bowl of the season after a breakout campaign that had the league's #1 total defense. And you know what's funny is that after 2 years, the Texans realized that, they were like, hey, maybe we should put Clowney back to the same position he played all his life, right? In South Carolina, he was a defensive end. He wasn't an outside linebacker. He didn't go into coverage. Rarely. There's exceptions. But a defensive end. They're like, hey, maybe we should move him from outside linebacker with the Texans to defensive end. And guess what? He finished with a career high in 6 sacks and 52 combined tackles. That's what happens when you draft a player to play a position that he was so successful at. So now I think it's safe to say, because you go through the injuries, you thought maybe this was going to be the NFL's version of the NBA, where you had Greg Oden, who just had terrible injuries and sadly was labeled a bust because of injuries. We started thinking maybe Jadeveon Clowney cannot stay healthy, and he's going to unfortunately fall into this trap. Thankfully, even though he was hurt throughout the season, he still produced, and now is projected, to become a real leader on that defense along with J.J. Watt. So, Texans fans, you've got to be excited to actually see your #1 overall pick playing like a #1 overall pick. Took some time, but maybe that's just a sign for us as media, as fans, to give these players some time. We always, attack them, and if something, especially something unfortunate like to an injury, or if they struggle for a couple of weeks, oh, this guy's a bust, oh, he's terrible, he was a system player, there was issues. They start micro looking at some of the details in the scouting reports to find anything that's wrong, and then start believing it and going forward and talking about it. Maybe we just need to take some time, and maybe it takes some of these players 2 to 3 years, like it was back in the old days. And I say old days, back into the early 2000s, late 90s and onwards, that it took a couple years, 2 to 3 years, for these players to fully develop and get to game speed and then start producing. We're so used to it's got to be instant, especially with coaches getting fired. You could go to the Browns, and if you don't win, which I guess we could put an asterisk by Hugh Jackson right now, but if you don't win very quickly within 2 years, you're gone. We need winners now. It's instant when it takes time to develop. So maybe I'm looking too much into it. Possibly. But good thing for Jadeveon Clowney to get back and back to rocking. Now, the Packers seem like they're moving on from Eddie Lacy, possibly. Green Bay Packers wide receiver Ty Montgomery is no more, at least at receiver. He's making the full-time switch to running back. He obviously played through that the whole majority of the season. He led the team with 457 yards rushing on 77 carries, an average of 5.9 yards per carry. But it wasn't until week 7 against the Chicago Bears, which also was his breakout game, that he then became one of their main running backs, as the running back depth just got depleted from injury to injury to injury. Or actually, it was week 15 against Chicago that he went off for 16 carries, 162 yards. So, apparently he talked during the player exit interviews with head coach Mike McCarthy. He expressed the desire to remain at the running back. So if you have a Ty Montgomery number 88 jersey, hey, keep that. It's probably not going to be worth anything. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. You never know. He could become one of the elite running backs in the NFL, and maybe that jersey is worth something. So because of NFL rules, this season it didn't matter because he was technically still a wide receiver just playing the running back position. So by NFL rules, though, once he makes that official switch to a running back, he has to switch his number from anywhere from the 20s through, I think you go through 49, something like that, or 20 to 45, 46, something like that. And that'll be his running back number. So he won't be wearing 88 anymore. Not a big deal with most people. I kind of like to know what numbers are going to wear, especially when I played Madden back in the day. I still play every now and then. If you want them sticks, just hit me up. But I would always like, especially like rookies, oh man, I hope they're wearing their college number, and I'll try to see what they would look like and put them in, the franchise. Back in the days. But anyways, now his role is going to be, going to be kind of different. Of course, he's still going to line up at receiver every now and then, which gives the Packers an incredible amount of room with that offense to throw him in. They can trust him at wide receiver because that's what he plays. That's what he played. And they can also put him, obviously, at running back. That's going to be his main position. But the Packers have to decide whether to re-sign running back Eddie Lacy. Eddie Lacy started off the year very strong. He was leading the league with 5.1 yards per carry through the first 5 games of the season. And then he got hurt. And then he was obviously placed on IR. Rest of the season, he's out. And you start thinking, well, what's going to happen with him? He's a contract year. He's a free agent this year. Come March, he's a free agent. Do the Packers re-sign him, or are they still worried? Apparently, he's still not fully recovered from his injury, from that ankle injury. So, they were worried about his weight. It was going up and down. It looked like this season got it back on track. And you have 4.5 games of film and how he was playing. Can he come back to that? And what if you re-sign him to what would look like, a 3 to 5 year deal? What if he comes back and his weight's, out of control again? And he's not that same player you had just for 4.5 games. And of course, he's had a pretty good track record. He's done pretty well. So what happens? Or do you just stick with, and maybe it's a cheaper option, and you stick with Ty Montgomery, and you just draft another running back late in the draft, which the running back class this season in this draft is pretty good. You can get a 5th, 6th, 7th round running back that could be a third down type of back. Look at the Bears. They got Jonathan Howard pretty late. They also had Kadeem Carey, who was like a 5th rounder. There's some good talent in the running back class that will be pushed back through the 4th, 5th, 6th round that the Packers can then go and get. Something to look at. I think Eddie Lacy will stay as long as he doesn't try to become a money grabber, which we'll talk about in just a second with Kirk Cousins. But I think it's going to be fine. But Ty Montgomery switching to running back is going to be unique and pretty fun to watch as a full-time position now. So we'll see how that goes. Assistant head coach / defense as well of the Seattle Seahawks, Rocky Seto. He's leaving the Seahawks to enter the ministry. I don't know why I put the ministry. A ministry. The team confirmed he's a Christian, and he coached with Pete Carroll at USC and joined him in the NFL in 2010 as a quality control coach on defense. The following season, he was promoted to the assistant defensive backs coach, working with the Seahawks safeties, and later was named the passing game coordinator. And then finally in 2015, he after Chris Richard took over as the defensive coordinator, Seto was named the assistant head coach of and / defense as well. Among his responsibilities over the years was the implementation of the Seahawks rugby-style tackling that's been so popular throughout high school and college football, and has been a kind of like the go-to in how to tackle. So that is pretty cool. I respect his decision, and I like that Pete Carroll was also cool within how he talked about it. The Seattle Times was the first to report this. That was a pretty interesting tidbit to add on to the show, and a reason why he's doing it. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, on the other side of this is Kirk Cousins. He's looking to get paid. Big time. A Pro Bowl quarterback, Kirk Cousins, which we'll see on Sunday and see how he plays against some of the better talent. He made it clear Thursday that he's willing to play on another 1-year deal of the franchise tag. Now, he was franchise tag earlier this past season. Franchise tag was, what was it? $19.953 million. Pretty hefty, but this year it would increase to $23.94 million for 1 year guaranteed. Now, it's kind of iffy if you want to give him that much. And I said, quote, we will cross that bridge when we come to it, but I would probably do it what I did last year. I will sign it. I will play with it. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. End quote. And I wouldn't be either to play on a deal that's $20 million plus guaranteed. That's fine with me. I'll play for a year. If I get hurt, well, I'm smart with my money. I'll be okay. $20 million, I can retire. I'm good. So it's tough decision for Washington. They finished 8-7-1 last season under Cousins. They missed the playoffs again. Cousins threw, though, for a career high 4,900 yards, 25 touchdowns, had a passer rating of 97.2. And according to ESPN Stats and Information, there have been 13 players in NFL history to receive franchise tags back-to-back seasons, but none of them were quarterbacks. A little interesting. So maybe you look at past things and you see that a deal has always been worked out. Maybe not this time, because if he does get a long-term deal, let's say 4 to 5 year deal, it's going to be close to the $20 million per year. A ridiculous amount of money, but that's just the way the NFL salary cap is going, and based on past quarterbacks getting deals, that's just how it is. Now, there has been talk whether the 49ers are interested in Kirk Cousins, and it looks like they are. If he decides to become a free agent, if he can't work out a deal with the Washington team. Ooh, Washington. And this would actually be good for the 49ers. You bring in Kirk Cousins, and this is with the exception of that you're also bringing in Kyle Shanahan of the Atlanta Falcons, their offensive coordinator, as their head coach. You bring him in, and now you can sit back just a tad bit. There's a little bit of breathing room for the 49ers. As we all know, you look at that 49ers roster, and it's absolutely garbage. They need help everywhere. So that gives you the leeway of using that third overall pick as a potential bait to trade out, get multiple picks, which Jim Harbaugh did pretty well at, and actually developing better players. Or you go after maybe a Jonathan Allen. You could trade down, get Mike Williams a couple picks later down. There's a lot you could potentially do with that third overall without having to reach for a quarterback in this draft class that seems pretty weak. Again, I'm sold on Deshaun Watson. A lot of other analysts aren't. I'm not sold on Mitch Trubisky. Deshaun Kaiser is a great developmental guy, but the 49ers can't use a third overall pick on a quarterback who is not ready to go week one. And honestly, I'm a little uncertain that Deshaun Watson's ready to go week one, and he's my top quarterback by a long shot. So I don't think Trubisky is. I don't think Kaiser is, and any of the other quarterbacks, I don't think they're ready to go week one. So what do you do? If Kirk Cousins is available for the 49ers, awesome. If he's not, it's going to be tough. But for Kirk Cousins, he's looking to get paid, and ultimately he's in a good spot where he produced last year. Maybe not the wins, but stats-wise, he did produce, had a career-high year, and he's going to get paid regardless. He's going to get up there in that $20 million per year regardless. Now, if you're Washington, do you re-sign Kirk Cousins to a long-term deal? Or do you place another franchise tag that was going to be upwards to $23 million that 1 year alone? And then have to go through this again about possibly re-signing him to a long-term deal? Or do you just let him walk? And you draft a quarterback later in the draft? It's tough. You can't think Colt McCoy's ready to go. Washington knows they can't, that it would be a huge step back if they let Kirk Cousins walk. That's why I think they're going to go ahead and give him that long-term deal, 4 years, give him that $20 million per year, and just got to hope that you can cut cap, maybe letting Deshaun Jackson go, and you kind of play with the numbers a little bit. We'll see. Let's see what else we got here. Joe Thomas, Browns offensive tackle, 10-time Pro Bowler, I should say. He said Thursday on the Dan Patrick Show, quote, "I would say you would want to go defense. I think you need to get a pass rusher," end quote. He thinks that they should go defense with that first overall pick in the 2017 NFL Draft. He later went on to say, quote, "You got to be careful reaching for a quarterback at number one because if they fail, they don't help your team at all. Whereas if you pick a defensive lineman and maybe they don't live up to the hype, you can still find a place to get them on the field and have an impact. We need guys that can come in and start and that can contribute, end quote. And, you know, his Thomas's take is pretty interesting because he has struggled through so many starting quarterbacks since he was drafted 3rd overall in the 2007 draft. And just like we just talked about with some of the other quarterbacks, it is a weak quarterback class. You know, top quarterbacks overall, you look at the top 3 by many scouts and draft analysts and whoever you want to look at, it all seems it's a different order, but the top 3 remain the same in Deshaun Watson, Mitch Trubisky, and Deshaun Kaiser. And none of these guys have gotten a lot of hope to be your starting quarterback week 1. Now, it looks like Deshaun Watson doesn't even want to go to the Browns. You know, the Browns asked him to participate in the Senior Bowl, which I believe Deshaun Watson should have played in anyways. Now, the Browns coaching staff is one of those that will be coaching in the Senior Bowl on Saturday, and potentially they could have said, hey, we're going to be coaching him in there. So we get to know him a little bit. It looks like he doesn't even want to go there, whether that's the 1st overall pick or that's the 12th overall pick that the Browns have in the 1st round. So, and also, you know, Thomas has also stressed the importance of identifying and developing a franchise quarterback because, again, he's gone through so many that he's just frustrated for losing over and over so many years, and he doesn't want to leave, and he likes staying in Cleveland. So it's going to be interesting to see where the Browns go with this and how they take the draft and who they go with. I think we can all agree the 1st overall pick is going to be Myles Garrett. And the Browns would be dumb to not draft Myles Garrett or Jonathan Allen with that 1st overall pick because those guys will be gone by the time they come back around with that 12th overall pick. You're likely to have possibly 2 or all 3 of those quarterbacks, for sure one of them, with that 12th overall pick. Now, the last week I said that we would have Matt Yustin. He was our draft expert. Notice the word was. He won't be able to come on the show anymore. Now, during this time, he was an intern and now is officially working for the Canadian Football League team Toronto Argonauts as one of their draft analysts. And because of contract rules, he can't talk on the show. He can't come on to the show, which I told him, and I guess, again, we can all agree here. I respected that because that is much more important because he's actually working for a professional league team in the CFL. So he can't do a mock draft, but doesn't mean we still can't. So last year we had his mock draft, which I agreed with majority of it, more than 90% of it. So it was kind of like ours. But this year we will have our own mock draft. And we will do it probably the week after the Super Bowl. Obviously, getting accustomed to this new job, I want to be able to make sure I have enough time to put everything into it. And again, it'll be a full 32 pick overall. 32 teams, all 32 picks. It's going to be exciting. So it's going to be a lot of work, but that's why I wanted to wait. And of course, next week we'll talk about the Super Bowl. We'll have our Super Bowl preview. We might go live. I'm looking to set up everything for both Facebook Live, Instagram Live, Periscope, and of course Spreaker and YouTube, going live on all of those platforms at the same time on Super Bowl Sunday. So that'll be exciting. So be on the lookout for that. So be sure to follow me on Twitter at Short Sports Show because that's where I'm going to be releasing the links and the information for that. But our last bit of news here is that there were less reported concussions in the NFL in 2016. The National Football League announced Thursday that there was across-the-board decline in all areas of the diagnosed concussions during the 2016 season. Compared to 2015, the overall number dropped from 275 to 244. It was still a pretty good amount. Now, Michael David Smith of Pro Football Talk of NBC noted that there was a decrease in every category, including preseason practices, preseason games, regular season practices, and regular season games as well. Now, the San Francisco 49ers chairman John York said on a conference call, to the league, that he also saw more players coming forward with reported concussions. So that is a win in itself, because now you don't have the, oh, hey, I'm all right, I can go back in. And then it just gets worse. Now these guys are saying, hey, I feel like I have concussion-like symptoms. Check it out. And if it's, just a headache or whatever, it's just a small thing, get back in there and get ready to go. If it's something that needs to be looked at more, take them to the training room and have them go through the test. That's good. Now, in September, Ken Belson of the New York Times passed along details after the NFL announced its intention to spend an additional $100 million to develop new technology that could make football safer, as well as fund more research on the impact of head injuries. Now, while this doesn't involve the NFL, UAB, University of Alabama in Birmingham, they just released their partnership with a new helmet company. I'll put a picture up here so you guys can see. It's a pretty good picture, pretty good helmet, I should say, design. It looks just kind of like the Revo Speed mixed with some of the other type normal Rydell helmets that you normally see. So it's pretty unique. There's some like the Zenith, no disrespect, but those are just straight up ugly. And nobody wears them except for that Under Armour All-American game in high school and the Army All-American game. Other than that, I rarely see any college athletes or college teams who wear those helmets, especially when you get to the NFL. I rarely see anybody wear those. To me, they're just ugly. But this one, not so bad. So while that's college and not NFL, you're starting to see all over the place more and more schools, more and more programs, more and more franchises taking the necessary steps to ensure player safety, as this has been one of those constantly reported things that sometimes people just don't understand, that football is a pretty heavy contact sport. Maybe we all kind of get it now. One key question that remains is the potential link between playing football and having CTE. Now, a total of 165 former football players of every level, from high school to professional, were studied, and 79% of them were found to have CTE. In addition, 40% of all those players positively identified for the disease played either offense or defensive line. So that's very important information, because even though it's somewhat still a question, I think we can all understand with the statistics and with the science in it, that there is a link towards it. And it's key to have this information. While it seems scary to some, it's key to have it so you know where your main red area of concern is. While there's the broad area of just football players in general, you know where majority of that contact is coming, what equipment, what safety, what new technology can be constructed with to help all players all around, especially the offensive defensive line, where of course it's called in the trenches for a reason. So I like this. It's less concussions, so at least we're taking the necessary steps. Yes, it was just by a few, but if it's just one every year, that's a step forward. So I like this. Thought I'd throw it in here on the show. And that is it for today's show. Again, Super Bowl prediction and Super Bowl preview will be next week's show. And we're working on getting some interviews here with some of the draft eligible players. So be on the lookout for that. Again, follow me on Twitter at Short Sports Show. Become a fan on Facebook, The Short Sports Show. And whether you're listening on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, Stitcher Radio, YouTube, wherever it might be, thank you guys so much for listening. As always, God first, God bless. And I will see you guys next Friday morning. I'm out. Peace.